Purim, which represents the Jewish victory over the enemies. So we should have that speedily in our days. Anyway, so we were learning the Rambam, the Maimonides, which is the foundational book of the entire Torah. Where the Rambam told us that not only did the Creator give Moses the written Torah, which is the Torah scroll that people read, but he also gave Moses an explanation of the Torah, which is found in the Talmud, and it was passed down by word of mouth from the Creator through Moses, all the way to the Talmud until the Rambam finally wrote it all down for us to learn on YouTube right now. So you can follow along with the new English translation at osmos.com, and then AI books, and then navigate towards the oral Torah, which is the Torah that was given to Moses by word of mouth, besides for the written word. Then Mishneh Torah. The word Mishnah means second to, because the Rambam's book is a second to the Torah. And for now, the current events, we're finishing in a part of the book of Sefer Hamada, the book of knowledge, which is one of the first books. And then there's other things to learn here as well. We started in the beginning earlier, but right now, the current events, there's a daily cycle to learn. The Lubavitch Rebbe told at least every Jew to learn the Maimonides every single day, 3 chapters, ideally, or 1 chapter if you can. But there's some parts that are relevant for non-Jews as well, such as the current part of the Rambam, which is called the laws of idolatry. What does it mean to worship idols? So this is what the Rambam is talking about. The Torah talks a lot about don't worship other gods and idols. So what does that mean? So, okay, so you might be taken back. Let's take a look at this translation. Click on the I, and then go to comments, and then you can say Osmos translations. And then this is hard to follow like this, so you could click on read inline. Then you could read it side by side, or depending on how big the font is, it could be side by side or up and down. And then we could follow along with the Hebrew and the English, basically. So this is like the foundational laws of idolatry. What does idolatry mean? This is the Hilchos Avodas Kochavim V'Chukosehem. The Rambam tells us what the Creator told Moses at Mount Sinai and passed it down the word of mouth through thousands of years until the 11th century when the Rambam was. So this is the laws of idolatry and its practices. So Yesh Bichlalan Chamishim V'Achas Mitzvos. So there's 51 commandments about idolatry. People think, oh, idolatry, just like don't think about other gods. There's actually 51 different things. So the Rambam talks about. We don't. We could go through all of it now, but you can read on your own. But we're going to brush through some of it. So there's basically shtei mitzvahs asa. There's 2 mitzvahs called positive mitzvahs. Really, in the Torah, it says there's 2 types of commandments. Some mitzvahs, sometimes the Creator commanded us to stay away from bad things that are harmful to us. Those are called negative commandments, not because they're like bad, but it's because the Creator told us to refrain from doing certain things, to keep us safe. But then the Creator also doesn't want us to just stay away from stuff all day. He also wants us to actively do a lot of stuff to reveal the light of the Creator in the world. So that's called the positive commandments. So every idea in the Rambam's book, the Rambam essentially organized the Torah into different ideas, and each idea it's organized by the number of commandments. So the idea of idolatry has 2 positive commandments, 2 things that we actively do to stay away from, not just to stay away from, but 2 things that are actively involved in making sure we don't do idolatry. And 49 things, the Arba'in V'Seishim mitzvos also say, and 49 things, negative commandments, 49 things that the Creator told us to stay away from. Not just like, oh yeah, don't worship other gods, big deal. 49 things, that's a big deal. There's no prata, and this is the details. We'll just brush through it. So the AI kind of did 1 instead of, it's supposed to be 1, but it did A, which is, you'll see how it goes or whatever. So first of all, not to turn to idolatry. We'll just brush through it for now. Not to pursue the thoughts of the heart and the sight of the eyes, meaning even without actually bowing down to other statues, just the act of pursuing the thoughts of one's heart for anything and the sight of one's eyes for anything is considered part of the laws of idolatry. And not to blasphemy, whatever that means. So not to curse the name of Hashem. So these are prohibitions of idolatry. Not to serve it in the way of its worship. This is talking about serving actual statues of idolatry, as the Rambam says. Not to bow down to not only bowing down to statues, but the Rambam is going to elaborate that there's different kinds of foreign worship that people used to do, and some people still do, unfortunately, regarding bowing down to statues, worshiping statues. So first of all, not only bowing down, but even if there's another way of worshiping a certain idol that does not involve bowing down, then that's also prohibited. But in addition to that, not to prostrate oneself to it, even if people don't usually bow down to a certain idol, but bowing down to any idol, regardless of what type it is forbidden as well. It says not to make an idol for oneself. One should not make like statues, images of people, as it says, for one's. I mean, he's going to elaborate what the exact criteria for that is later. Not to just, even if someone's not worshiping it, just not to make it. Not to make an idol, even for others. Not only to not build an idol, even not to worship it for oneself, but not even if someone else says, oh, hey, can you like build this statue for me or something? I mean, statue, we're going to see exactly what, not all statues, but general idea. Like you're not allowed to make the graven images. Not to make images, even for decoration. Suros usually means 3D images, like 3D statues, and usually of people. He's going to get into the details, so it's not like all statues are forbidden, but this is like the general law, and then it goes into the details later. It says not to entice others to it, meaning even if someone does not actually worship it, but not to tempt other people to worship the idol is also forbidden. And also to burn the accursed city. In the Torah, it mentions that if the majority of the members of a city in Israel, under certain conditions which don't really apply at the moment, but basically if the majority of the citizens in a city worship idols, and under a lot of other circumstances which again don't really apply, then it says there's a commandment to burn down the entire city and to kill everyone in it. So that's pretty brutal. And so not to rebuild the city, not to build the city after it was burned down, and not to benefit from any of its possessions. This is all these commandments that he's mentioning now are all details about the law of burning down and killing everyone in a city that mostly worships idols. So he's saying not to rebuild it, not to benefit from anything in it, not to incite an individual to idolatry to serve it. Yeah, earlier we said not to entice others towards it. Now we're saying a different prohibition, not to, I guess it's a different verb in Hebrew, to incite or entice. In English it's kind of the same thing, but they're almost the same, but there's slight differences. Not to like get other people, not to get someone else to worship an idol, and not to love the inciter, meaning usually there's a commandment to love everyone, like love your neighbors, yourself, etc. Like judge people favorably, be like lenient. But it says when someone tries to incite others to worship idols, there's a commandment to not love that specific person. And again, these laws have a lot of detail, so it's not just like generalized things. So there's a lot that goes into it. And none of it really applies anymore at the time or until the Messiah comes. Anyway, so not to abandon one's hatred of him. So one commandment is not to actively love someone who incites others to worship idols. And another one is not only not to love them, but to actively hate that person and to not abandon. Usually hatred is bad for most things. But in this case, this is like the one case where it's like not only one should not love the other person, but one should actively hate them and not abandon the hatred, not to rescue him. If usually we're supposed to rescue and save people's lives, like if they're in danger, if someone's like stuck at the bottom of a well, you bring up like a ladder. But it says regarding someone who gets others to worship idols, we're not supposed to save his life if he's in danger. And he says later, even worse than that, but we'll get to that. Not to teach merit on his behalf. I mean, the translation is not, it's like an exact translation, but it means like, it's talking about like in court, there's like some people can give an argument for a merit, and some people can give an argument for not a merit. So it says there's a mitzvah not for anyone, there's a mitzvah basically for people not to try to find merits for that person. Usually we're supposed to find merits for people in judgment. The Torah is all about like kindness and merits, but for this one person who gets others to incite others to worship idols, we're not supposed to even try to come up with like a reason with merits. Not to refrain from teaching guilt on his behalf. So not only are we not supposed to find merits, but if someone is able to argue against him, like to find guilt on his behalf, then there's a mitzvah to not refrain from doing it. Not to prophecy in its name. I guess prophecy is a verb, kind of. Yeah. So all those commandments we mentioned were all to do to people who are not who entice others to worship idols. Now we're saying like other stuff. So another commandment is not to prophesize in its name, not to like pretend to be a prophet for a false god, basically, or basically, and not to listen to one who prophesizes in its name. And if someone else claims to like hear things from other gods, one should not listen to that other person. There's a mitzvah to not listen to that person. I don't know what's with this. Yeah, so not to prophesy falsely, even in the name of the Atzimus. Yeah, I told it to translate Hashem's name as Atzimus. So earlier we said the earlier commandments were not to prophesize in the name of other gods, but now we're saying even if someone is pretending to prophesize in the name of the Creator, of the actual Creator, but one is just doing so falsely, that's also a negative commandment. One should, something that people basically, this is the 22nd, so now it's like going through the English alphabet, like based on the number. So Hebrew Kaf Beis is 22, and V, I guess, is the 22nd letter. So the 22nd negative commandment. These are all details about idolatry, not to refrain from killing a false prophet. So basically, if someone is like a false prophet, either claiming to be a false prophet from other gods, or if someone is claiming to be a prophet from Hashem, but is proven that he's not, then one should not refrain from killing that person. Not to swear in the name of idolatry. One should not like make an oath, like, oh, if they swear in the name of some false god. And not to practice divination. There's a specific type of sorcery of the Torah called Ov, which it translates as divination, but he gets into the details. It's different kinds of sorcery. And not all these apply to all people. Some of these only apply to Jews, some apply to non-Jews as well. And so not to practice necromancy. Yidoni is a different type of sorcery where people like talk to the dead and stuff in specific ways. So the details he mentions later, so it's not just like general things. So, and not to sacrifice to Molech. Molech was the name of a certain type of idol in ancient times, and basically people would like take their children and put them in like a fire to them. But in this specific case, Rambam says that people would not actually kill their children like they would other idols, but this specific act of idolatry, he says, is just to take the child and put it through fire, like back and forth, without actually killing it. But even that's forbidden, because it's like its own prohibition. Not to erect a standing stone. It's like a certain type of stone people would use to bow down on for like idols and stuff. Not to prostrate oneself on a smooth stone. Yeah, basically, the only time the Jews are allowed to bow down, in general, even to Hashem, on a stone surface was only in the temple in certain circumstances. But in general, one should not bow down on a smooth stone. That's why during Yom Kippur, the Jewish people, they put like a carpet on the floor if they're praying with like on the cement or something, because they're not supposed to bow down on stone. And not to plant an Asherah. Asherah, he mentioned later, is a type of tree that people worship as a false god. So if someone if someone knows that someone else is planning on worshiping this tree as a god, one is not allowed to plant it. That's called an Asherah, a tree that people worship. And to destroy idolatry and all that is done for it, or really done could also mean anything made for it. Like anything, one should destroy actual idolatrous statues and any accessories that go along with it, which he gets into later. Not to benefit from idolatry and all its implements, meaning like if there's a statue that was worshipped for idolatry, or if the statue had things on it, like clothes or whatever, and then one is not allowed to like sell, one's not allowed, if it's made of gold, one's not allowed to melt it down and resell the gold. They have to destroy it completely. Not to benefit from consecrated items. No, I don't think consecrated items. Sipoi nevad. I think that, I'm not sure if that's an accurate translation. Not to benefit from things that are covered in, it's a separate prohibition, not to benefit from things that are covered in metal and that are worshipped. I guess, I mean, there's different, he's mentioned, it's kind of included in what's earlier, but sometimes the prohibitions are like doubled. So specifically, if something is coated in metal and then worshipped as a god, one's not supposed to benefit from that. Not to make a covenant with idolaters at all, in any way. Not to show them favor. I mean, he specifically gets into like, what does this even mean? Like, not to show them favor. He gets in later, he talks about not to allow idolaters to settle in the land of Israel if the Jews are in power, etc. Not to allow them to dwell in our land. Oh, okay, that's a different prohibition. But he mentions not to show them favor specifically as related to this as well later, but they're different details. Not to imitate their customs and clothing. So this is earlier was talking about just Israel. Now we're saying anywhere in the world, Jewish people or even Noahides in general are not allowed to like try to fit in with the customs of what idolaters do, not to practice divination. I mentioned divination before, but in Hebrew there's different verbs, different types of divination, and in English it all kind of translates to the same thing. But he gets into specifically the different kinds of sorcery. And in Hebrew, they're all different, but in English, it's kind of like the same. Not to practice sorcery, which is also similar to what we said earlier, but I mean, the details of that is explained in the Rambam explains later. Not to practice enchantments. And all those details, all that is like, what is enchantments? What's the difference between in sorcery and enchantments? It's all explained. So this is just like the headlines. Not to form a conspiracy. Okay, I'm not sure if that's an actual translation. Hever is like a type of enchantment as well. So not, I mean, it's a different word in Hebrew than enchantment earlier, but it's like different kinds of like spells and sorcery and stuff that is associated with idolatry. Not to consult the dead, which is mentioned earlier, and also when Jewish people go to the graveyard to pray at the graveyard of a righteous person, that's not considered consulting the dead, and there's a lot of commentaries that explain why. Consulting the dead is only specifically like a different kind of idolatrous practice that he mentions here. Not to inquire of a diviner, not to like ask someone who, if someone claims to be like a sorcerer or something, one should not try to seek their advice. Like no psychics, basically, allowed. Not to inquire of a necromancer. So now it's getting into like in Hebrew, each of these things, sorcery and necromancy, are all different words. But in English, it kind of sounds like the same thing. But basically, just don't like get involved with people who are claiming to be like sorcerers. Not to practice witchcraft, which is, I mean, what's the difference between witchcraft and sorcery? I mean, it mentions later, but it's not really understood. This is just like the headlines. Not to shave the corners of one's head. This is like why Jews usually grow out really long hair. Technically, I mean, some Hasidic Jews grow their hair like really long in the corner of their sideburns, but doesn't have to be that long. It's just supposed to be like a tiny bit of the corner left over. But the main thing is not to shave the actual corners of one's head, because that's what idolaters would do. Not to damage the corners of the beard, which is, basically that's why Jews usually grow beards, because the idolaters would shave their beards. And there are certain ways, there are like certain exceptions for how some Jews are allowed to shave with like an electric razor if they still shave it a certain way. But shaving with a razor is forbidden because it's what idolaters would do. It's one of the commandments, number 46, because this is 47. AU. So this is the AI kind of in Hebrew. Mem Zayin is 47, but when AI ran out of English letters, it just kept on doubling them up. So A 26 plus U, I guess, adds up to 47. So it's kind of cool. A man shall not bear witness against. Okay, this is not an accurate translation. I have to fix this. It means a man should not wear the clothing of a woman. Okay, this I guess it didn't really understand the AI. This is all AI translation, so it's not really so accurate. But then, basically, a man should not wear women's clothing is a more accurate translation. And number 48, and a woman should not wear man's clothing. Not what it says here. Man, it's talking about clothing, because that's what idolaters would do. Not to make tattoos on one's skin, and not to hiskoded. It says mutilate oneself, but it really translates to actually like shave one's head. I'm pretty sure completely. So I'm not sure why it said mutilate. I don't know how I got that. And not to make a bald spot for the dead. Like usually idolaters, if someone passed away, part of the idolatrous mourning, they would just like rip out like a big part of their hair in the middle of their head. But we should not do that. Even there is different ways of mourning, but not for that. Okay, and an explanation of all these commandments is in these chapters. So the Rambam first mentions like the headlines. That was basically 49 different prohibitions of idolatry. That's probably one of the longest headlines that the Rambam mentions. Usually it's only like 5 or 10. But this section of the idolatry has 49 prohibitions. It's not just like, oh yeah, idolatry is like just don't worship other gods or in your heart, whatever. That too, but 49 details of what it means to not worship idols. So now the Rambam goes into this whole explanation. What exactly is idolatry? How did it start? It says, Bimei Enosh, in the days of Enosh, says, Tau bnei ha'adam, the children of men, erred, Taus gadol, a great error. They erred very greatly. It says, V'nivara atzas chachveoso hador, and it says, and the counsel of the wise men of that generation was rejected. basically there was a times of Enosh was shortly after Adam, the first man. This was way before the flood happened, and a few generations after the world was created, then there's this guy named Enosh who was a good guy. I mean, he was like Enosh himself was among the erring. I mean, they were wise men. They weren't like they didn't start out as idolatrous. Everyone knew about the Creator when Adam was created, because like they knew, oh, the Creator just made this whole world with Adam, and Adam was still alive then, basically. So everyone knew the Creator made the world, and the Creator was there. But there was like these wise people in the names of the times of Enosh. Actually, I'm not sure if Adam was alive at the times of Enosh, but basically shortly after, and this was their error. They made a mistake. They didn't intentionally rebel against the Creator. They said, since Elohim, since the Creator created the stars and spheres to govern the world. It said, I mean, we didn't really learn it, but earlier the Rambam talked about the stars and the stars, and how all the stars are like set in basically the Earth is essentially the center of the universe according to the Torah. It's spherical. It's a ball, but it's in the center, and like right outside the outer layer of the atmosphere of the Earth. Then, I mean, people call it orbit nowadays, but it's saying really there's like an invisible, like a sphere that surrounds the Earth, which is what the moon is stuck in, and then like that sphere turns around the Earth, and then on top of the moon, then there's another sphere for the other planet, like Venus, and then that turns around the moon, and that's like essentially everything turns around the Earth, the sun and the moon and all the planets and stars. They turn around the Earth through these spheres. And it says really, other places say like the spheres, through the spheres, there's like actual, through the spheres that has like the stars and the planets are able to have spiritual influence on the Earth, as it's explained in Kabbalah and stuff. So it's not that the stars themselves actually control things on the Earth, but the Creator chose to control the Earth through the spiritual influence of the stars. So the stars themselves, the truth is that the stars themselves don't actually have any power of their own or any free choice or anything, but they are used by the Creator to actually influence everything. So everything that happens on the Earth happens because of stars, and that's why there's so many stars, because there's so many things that happen on Earth. So basically, so the original idolaters, they knew that. They knew the Creator made the stars and the spheres that the stars are in to guide the Earth with the spiritual energy, and placed them on high, and a lot of them glory. The stars, we can learn it later, but the Rambam talks about how the stars are all alive, and they're all living beings that are conscious of the Creator, and all the stars, they constantly praise the Creator, and they're more intelligent than people, and they sing the Creator's praises every day. So it says that the earlier people, they knew that the Creator made the stars, and He made the stars as intelligent beings, who and it appeared that the stars themselves had the spiritual influence on the world, even though the reality is that the influence that comes through them is only from the Creator doing it from them, through them. But they didn't realize that. It says they are ministers who serve before Him. So all this stuff is true. The stars are servants of the Creator that are alive, and through them there's spiritual energy that comes to the Earth. But the people, they made a mistake, and their mistake was that they thought that they were worthy of praise and glory, and to share the glory with them. Like they were praising the Creator, but they thought, oh, well, the Creator also made these stars to govern the world with, so maybe we should also praise the stars to like thank them for the spiritual energy. The truth is, as it says, is that really the Creator, the stars themselves don't have any free choice to influence the world, even though they're alive, and even though there's spiritual energy that comes to the world from the stars. But the stars don't have any free choice, so they shouldn't be worshipped or thanked in any way. But the original people who were considered wise men at the time, they weren't like original idolaters. They were like descendants of Adam, and they knew like the Torah and stuff. They were wise, and they made a mistake though. And they thought their mistake was that this is the will of the blessed Atzmos, to magnify and honor those who magnify and honor Him, because they thought, oh, the stars are constantly praising the Creator, so maybe we should like praise the stars just for praising the Creator. It didn't start out as idolatry. It just started out as like thanking those who they thought had the free choice to thank Him. They didn't realize that the stars just didn't have any free choice at all, even though they were alive. But that was a different issue. As a king desires to honor his servants who stand before him. Yeah, a king has servants. The servants have free choice, and the servants choose to serve the king. That's why a king honors them. So they thought that the stars have free choice to be able to honor the Creator, like people do. But no, even though the stars are alive and conscious and aware of their existence and aware of the Creator, but they don't have free choice to worship the Creator. They're just like an axe in the hands of an axe cutter, even though they're alive. So there's a mistake. And they thought their mistake was that this is the glory of a king. They thought it would be a glory of Hashem to worship the stars. Since this matter, so that's how the original idolatry thought. They thought that it would be the will of they thought that by worshiping the stars, they would increase in the glory of Hashem, because worshiping those who worship Him. Since this matter came into their hearts, they began to build temples for the stars and to offer sacrifices to them and to praise and to glorify them with words and to prostrate themselves before them. This was like before the flood. People used to worship the stars not as a rebellious way, but they thought they made a mistake, like an honest mistake. They thought that they thought that by praising the stars, they would increase in the praise of the Creator, in order to attain the favor of the Creator in their evil understanding, or really Hebrew is bad understanding, meaning like mistaken understanding. I mean, evil, yeah, difference between evil and like mistaken at the time. At the original time, it was just a mistake, but then it turned like bad. And this was the essence of idolatry originally. It was just people trying to glorify the singular Creator through worshiping the stars, because they thought the stars had the free choice to serve the Creator. And they realized that the spiritual energy that exists on Earth exists from the stars, and they thought the stars had the free choice to be able to give it to them on their own. But no, they didn't realize that the stars in reality are just being like used by the Creator, like an axe in the hands of an axe cutter. And they happen to be alive and conscious of the fact that the Creator is using them, but they don't have any say in the matter. And thus, its practitioners who knew its essence would say, not that they say that there is no Elohim except the star. Meaning, originally, like, they didn't say that there was other gods, or they didn't say that there was like a different God than the Creator. They said, no, they agreed that there was one God. Like it says in Jeremiah, it says, who will not fear you, O King of the nations? For to you it is fitting, for among all the wise men of the nations, and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. And in one they